All right. Hi there. This is Heather Park. I'm with Michael Hoffman and Jeremy Kaylor. And today we're talking about Jeremy's upcoming course that's going to be all about numerology. This is an 8-week course that's going to be offered starting April 15th of this year. And for Mountain Time people, we're 6 to 8, and this is on Thursday evenings, and it's a consecutive 8 weeks. Is that right, Jeremy? Just straight every Thursday.
Yep.
And Jeremy already spoke about, numerology. We kind of take these numbers, they're sacred numbers and spiritual numbers. And so in this course, it sounds like we're going to be learning how our names and other aspects of our life kind of add up. And then you take those numbers, and Jeremy, you can take it away, but we go through these cycles. And so using the techniques that you're going to teach us, it will teach us many different things about maybe where we are in our life in terms of career, partnership, jobs, whether or not we're going to move. So can you tell us a little bit more?
Absolutely. And again, when we jump back to the fact that life runs in a 9-year cycle, and we take those numbers, we're going to then see that there are patterns. And then those patterns are going to ultimately get us to a place where we can see meaning and challenges and struggles. And it's one of those things where if you get into numerology early enough, you can almost predict the future. And it's not as nice and neat as predicting the future, but you can see, okay, this is a struggle that I'm going to have. This is a life lesson that I've got to work on. And here are the numbers that are going to help me understand that. Or here are the numbers that are going to present obstacles to me that if we know about it ahead of time, it's not as difficult to go through. And this is what the numerology helps us do. We're all connected. And if you're in a relationship or you have children, we can look at the numbers of your spouse. We can look at the numbers of your children, and we can say, here's where you're going to kind of butt heads with each other, or here's why you get along so well. And the numerology, the numbers reinforce that and provide that evidence to what we kind of already know is going on in our life.
Jeremy, that's very interesting. I have read a lot about sacred geometry and how the mathematics of the universe really is just the essence of what is source, whatever you want to call the self-organizing principle of the universe. But so is there a definite connection between sacred geometry and mathematics as an order or a pattern?
Absolutely. And we're going to look at, I've said life runs in a 9-year cycle. Well, if we actually look at that 9-year cycle, that cycle of 9 is the cycle of creation. And so we're going to look at natural law, God's laws, and show, okay, here's how this totally relates. The other thing with numerology is that if it's spiritual, it's got to have 3 layers to it. It's got to have that body, mind, spirit element for it to be, in my opinion, a spiritual truth. And numerology has that. It's got that physical understanding, that body understanding, that mental, emotional understanding, and then that spiritual layer. And so that's one of the big pieces that we're going to work on through this 8-week course, is moving out of that mundane physical understanding to that higher spiritual understanding. So when you see a 9 and mentally, it means endings, but spiritually now, that 9 has a much deeper meaning. And that's where we're going to take this class, expanding upon and relating it all back, because the spiritual truth is, it has to be true in the spirit world for it to come down to the physical world. If it doesn't come down to the physical world, then it's not a spiritual truth. And numerology is a spiritual truth.
Great. So you're talking in terms of cycles of 9 years. Is numerology based on numbers 1 through 9, or is it more expansive?
It's ultimately based on numbers 1 through 9.
Okay.
However, there are 3 different paths for numerology. And if we get into the other two paths, the Chaldean or the Kabbalistic numerology,
Mhm.
those don't follow the 9-year path. They have a
Oh,
little bit of a different connection and a historical reason behind why they follow something different than a 9-year path. And while we're not going to completely learn those other two paths of numerology, we are going to touch on them so that you can, when you leave this 8-week course, you can say, okay, you know what, I really was drawn to Chaldean and I want to learn more about that.
okay. So in this class, like, how does the cycle, not the 9-year cycle, how does your class work? Like, you had mentioned before, like for my name has a specific number meaning. And so I think in your free class, even your introductory class, and then the first class of this 8-week class, I think you said you were going to talk about how we can figure out what our number is according to our first, middle, and last name.
Yes. And so each letter of the alphabet has a numerical equivalent to it.
Okay.
And so that's where we're going to change our letters into numbers, and then we're going to analyze those numbers. And this throws back to, so I'm a 9. My soul's number is a 9, and that gives me an overarching influence with my life. But we look at my first name, and my first name, there are 2 elements to each name. And I don't want to give away all of the secrets ahead of time, but when we look at one aspect of my first name, it's a 5. And so now this 5 interrelates with my 9. And that's where we're going to take this to a higher consciousness level. And we're going to see, okay, this is why I do the things I do. This is why I react the way I react to the outside world and to other people. And that's where that goes. We can even take this to the place of, what street do you live on? Let's look at what do the letters of your street translate into.
Oh, cool.
Maybe the street you live on isn't a good street to live on, and that's why you're always in confrontation with your neighbors.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Why didn't I know this before I moved?
Exactly. Yes.
Learn this first.
Right.
There's a big shift in numerology right around the year 28. And I always want to just scream to all of these young adults. I want to be like, get a numerology reading for your 28, and I'm going to map out your whole life, and you'll see where this goes. And it does. It's like, oh, I wouldn't have got myself into so much trouble had I known some of these things. So,
right.
Yeah,
That's very helpful.
Yeah, and when you said like the cycles of like 9, immediately I flashed back to when I was 9 years old, and my whole life completely changed. I mean,
Oh, wow.
it came crashing down, and it was like, oh my God. So what you're saying, it just immediately struck a chord for me. And so I can't wait to do the math right now to see what number I'm at right now, so that's kind of scary in a way. It's like, oh, what does that mean? But perhaps taking the courses will enlighten us on, we're not into fear-based belief systems at the Institute, and I don't think this has anything to do with that. On the contrary, I think it's a way of exploring the map that we have chosen for our theme in this lifetime. Would you agree with that?
I would, absolutely. And there's not a negative aspect to numbers and numerology.
Right.
There are warning signs and there are challenges, but the way we're going to come to those is we're going to see, oh, you're in a 7-year, and a 7-year is all about going inward. And so if you don't choose to go inward, you're going to run into some conflicts. You're going to run into your soul's, you're battling your soul, because what your soul wants is to go inward. Right. And so that's really where this numerology is going to come into play, is let's look at, what does this number mean? Where is it hitting you? And how can you work it for the better so it makes life smoother and easier? Because that's what this should do. It makes life smoother and easier for you.
Yeah.
So Jeremy, can you give me an example? I'm sure you know what year you're in, but can you give me an example of how this has kind of worked within your life where you've maybe come into a challenge and you we're faced with these things at times. And it's like, if you have something to reflect on and can pull yourself out of that conflict long enough and maybe reflect on back on some of the numerology aspect, can you give us an example of how that maybe kind of helps you move through a conflict in your life?
Oh, absolutely. So I, not by my choosing, but I ended a work relationship.
Yes.
And when that work relationship terminated, I was starting a 1 year,
Mhm.
and that's new beginnings. And while it wasn't the new beginning I was expecting,
Yeah.
it was very much that new beginning. And as I moved throughout that calendar year and moved into the next calendar year, that shifted me into a 2 year. And a
Mhm.
2 year is about patience. And I wasn't getting that new job. And I
Right.
was like, well, this is interesting. And I couldn't see that I was in or remember or recognize that I was in that 2 year because of my physicalness. I was so frustrated and
Right.
discouraged and
Mhm.
felt like, it's like, okay, spirit, why haven't you given me this new job? Why haven't you done what I've asked for? And then when I was reminded, wait a minute, you're in a 2 year, you're trying to force something, sit back and be patient. All of a sudden, doors started opening up,
Mhm.
and what I thought were non-possible career things
Yeah.
started showing themselves.
Oh,
And so
cool.
that's where this comes into play. It's like, why am I frustrated, or why did this happen to me? And the
Mhm.
numbers almost always circle back and reference to give us that insight. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that's very helpful. I had another question. You kind of mentioned this 3 layers. So at the physical level, is it emotional and also spiritual that these numbers work? Because I'm kind of hearing like the word patience, and I'm thinking that number 2 might be patience. That's an emotional word. But is there like a spiritual aspect to number 2? Like, are we going to be given lessons around patience at the spiritual level, and then at the physical level of like, you're pushing too hard, your resume's out there, stop pushing, you don't need to call, like they'll call you, have the patience and wait, the phone will ring. Like, it seems like it's translatable along these 3 kind of aspects of our lives.
Exactly. And then two, would if we take the number 2 and we talk about the 2 is patience, that's that physical definition. And then
Okay.
as we move into that mental definition, we're going a little higher in consciousness. And
Okay.
as we take that mental emotional, now it's what, why do you need to be patient? Where is this impacting your life? And then we take it on a spiritual level. Patience is the outcome. Patience is what's needed, but we're looking at, if you're in a 2 year, then you're really working on relationships. But is that relationship between you and spirit because you're not trusting spirit? Is
Right.
that relationship that you're working on between you and your children? And
Mhm.
that's where the patience is showing itself. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to move from that one word definition
Yeah.
to a broader understanding. So again, I can give you a very quick, short meaning of your number, but I can give you a much longer reading when I go into the deeper levels and consciousness planes of that number and what it represents.
Wow, that's fascinating. There's
Yeah.
a lot to this that I didn't, I said earlier to these guys that I know about astrology, but and I kind of thought, oh, it's like astrology. It's really has nothing to do with astrology. So, that was my mistake and misinterpreting, that kind of, it was the lazy person's view of what this might be. But it sounds really fascinating.
I've heard, Jeremy, about the master numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Yes.
so like, for instance, and this has been happening to me more in the past 6 months, and I have no idea why. Invariably, I will look over at the clock and it'll be 11:11 or it'll
Mm-hmm.
be 1:11.
Yep.
And it's uncanny how many times this is happening in a day.
Yes.
I mean, it's just incredible. And So my question would be, these are supposed to be master numbers from what I understand. And so like, why is my my consciousness being attracted to gazing upon the 1111 111? So like, would you be talking about that and what that means? And I kind of like to know a little bit right now what that means.
Yeah. So yes, as much as I say life runs in a 9-year cycle, and we're gonna add up our numbers till we get to a single digit, it's actually twofold here. Yes, there are master numbers, and that's that 11, the 22, 33. You're going to read some things that say that go higher, but I stop at 33. And the short answer is that whatever's going on, you need to look at it from a purely spiritual lens. And so when you see that 11 over and over, stop and go, what's going on? What am I working on? What am I dealing with? And am I really looking at this from a spiritual place, not a physical place? And so there are times when we don't reduce the numbers down to a single digit because those master numbers come into play. And now if we really want to go down the rabbit hole, and we will in this 8-week course, is that as you're adding up your numbers, you're going to get the single digit is 5, but I get a 14 first. So I have to reduce one, I'd add 1 plus 4 to get to my 5.
Okay.
A 14 into a 5 means something very different
Oh, wow.
than a 23 into a 5.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And so now we've expanded our numerology from just beyond those 9 digits and our master numbers to those secondary numbers that really break down. You know what? I'm a 9, and this doesn't make sense to me. I don't resonate with what a 9 energy is. So let's look at that. Are you an 18-9? Are you a 27-9? And let's look at that aspect. And now all of a sudden, this makes more sense.
Oh, wow.
And then, and almost always, we're going to find that that 2 and that 7 are somewhere in your physical name, in your first, middle, or last name. And so the 9 of your life path isn't the emphasis that your soul wants you to pay attention to.
Oh, wow.
That's why as we work, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to work on building our own numerology chart by the end of this 8-week course. You're going to be able to see, okay, here's the numbers that really influence my life and why I behave and act outwardly and inwardly.
Would participants, Jeremy, be able to take this information, of course, and figure out their own numerology chart with your help, of course, but would they also be able to take away the ability to tentatively help somebody else with the numerology?
Yeah.
Would that be a takeaway from this course?
Absolutely. And
Good.
I utilize numerology on a very simple level in all of my readings, personal readings that I do. And that's what, if you're participating in this class, you're going to understand those 1 through 9 numbers. You're going to understand the 11, the master numbers, the 11, the 22, the 33, so that you can quickly and easily incorporate them into personal life, into readings, into understanding someone you're in conflict with at work, all of that. And then if they want to go further, they're going to have the skeleton, they're going to have the foundation to take that further as well. But yeah, I want them all to be able to, by the end of this 8-week course, at a minimum, have a good foundation of the number meanings and be able to look at every aspect of their life and incorporate that.
That's fantastic. I mean, I can't see anybody who wouldn't want to take this course.
So Jeremy, sorry, go ahead.
I said, once you've had numerology proven to you, you want to use it for everything. It's just it's my go-to. I won't do it. I will work very hard at not doing an interview on specific days because those numbers of that day have an energy to them.
So like,
And if I can control that, I do. Yeah.
right. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so like if you're dating somebody or you're in a relationship or a tentative relationship, and would you do the numerology on the person you're dating and see if that's a good match? And I mean, getting down to the practical applications of that, I would imagine that that's something I would want to know before
Yeah,
I did
it's an
that.
interesting question.
Well, I mean, you know, the takeaways I think have to be practical and usable.
Yeah,
And it seems like that would be just like, I really want to know if this is a good match or not.
Right.
right.
Yep.
I could have used it in the past, let me tell you. I just,
Yes. Yeah. And Heather, this is where that astrology really does circle back into it. We all know what our sign is, and we know what signs are compatible with us because we've learned that through astrology. So why not utilize that as well with numerology? I'm a 9, and there are
Right.
certain numbers that aren't going to resonate well with me, and I'm frustrated by them. And now we can't always find out hey, you know what, Heather? I know you're my work partner, but tell me your birthday, please. I need to know
Right.
birth. And so there's that element where we can't always find out, but usually someone we're in a relationship with, we can. And if nothing else, it gives us insight as to how we're going to be able to work with them, because I want to keep this relationship. So now let's see what the numbers are to make it work. What do we have to understand? Yeah.
Well, I would imagine too, like my husband's number is endings. And so he's sometimes focused on like the end result of something that we're working on when I have a different number. And so sometimes I'm like, oh, that's where his emphasis is. And it just makes me have an understanding of like his focus is here and mine is here. And it doesn't mean that, they're like this, missing each other, but it does make me remember, oh, we're focused at 2 different places on the same thing. So let me look at let him look at where I am over here, and let's meet in the middle.
Yep.
So I personally found just I did a reading with you, Jeremy, and it wasn't even a numerology reading, but you actually asked for my husband's information, or we had it. It was accessible, and you went ahead and just did that reading anyway. And I had that aha moment, where it's not like, he's just trying to get me to finish already. No, his emphasis is how it's going to look when this, is complete. He's interested in the completion aspect of it. So, it helps give a new perspective maybe to the way in which we move throughout the world and other people, like where the emphasis is put. I found that very helpful. And it was just his number and my number in that one aspect. It was one word. Yep. And I have reflected on that in the last couple of months, which is fun, You can go very deep with this, I think. Jeremy, I just did want to ask, these are going to be 2-hour classes. And so do you set it up like you do a lecture and then we sit and then kind of figure out the number maybe for our name or for something specific, and then we have time for question and answer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it will be. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to start with a lecture. We're going to work to a place. Everyone's going to work out that piece. We're going to come back and we're going to share as much as we all want to think that all we're doing is adding, but we have a tendency to add wrong sometimes. And so that's just that verification to make sure, wait a minute, okay, I did add up those numbers correctly and this is my number. This is the right number for me. Because honestly, as we work out this bigger total numerology chart, everything adds upon itself. And so it's a layer upon layer. And if we get one number wrong, it throws the whole rest of the chart off. So we'll work through that. And circling back to, we will spend some time working on pick someone, spouse, child, parent, and we're going to do some comparison, overlapping chart reading as well, so that you have that in your wheelhouse to work from in the future as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I also want to just say one thing about the classes that we're offering. At the Santa Fe Institute, we feel really strongly now that we've been on Zoom for a while that we don't have so many people that we have more than one screen. So we just include enough people so that when there is a question and answer portion of the class, everybody has access to that question and the response from the teacher. And we feel really strongly about that. So by saying this, I'm just going to let the people know watching this, there is a limited amount of space in these classes. So come to the free introductory class. But if you're interested in taking this class after watching this video, please go and sign up right away, because it will not be offered to like 100 people. It's a limited size. So Jeremy, did you have another question, Michael?
I was just going to make a comment, after listening to you, Jeremy, I don't see how I personally cannot afford not to take this class. I mean,
Interesting.
because the information is so rich and so meaningful. At least it would be meaningful for me. So yeah, I think what you're saying, Heather, is very true. If you really are interested in signing up for this class, do so as quickly as you can, so that you'll have a space. I would imagine, Jeremy, that later on you would have a subsequent class based upon more participation or the demand, because obviously I think that people are going to be talking about this class and recommending it as well. So yeah, I think that's something that I'm personally looking forward to, because I am going to be participating in this class, and on Saturday's introductory class as well. The other question, very briefly, are you going to offer like a bibliography that people can?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. With any class that I teach, it's definitely going to be, and for that, our 2-hour course, I'm going to share a book that really gets everybody hooked. But then really there's an extensive book list that I've learned and used. And I will share all of that as well, for sure.
Fantastic. That's great. Yeah.
That's so wonderful. Well, we'll wrap up for today, but Jeremy, thank you so much for being here with Michael and I today. And we're clearly, you can see our excitement. We're excited.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I'm going to be like, Michael, you and I have a conversation that we need to have. No, I'm just kidding. No, never. But please go to our website. We're at www.sfimss.org to find out more information. I also want to say one other thing. Jeremy, you offer private one-on-one readings. So you can do a numerology reading. You can do more of a reading on like a life question reading that's more about the auric field, and then you also do mediumistic readings. So you can find out information about how to work one-on-one with Jeremy. If there's some reason you can't get in this class right now and you want to know more and you want to work with Jeremy on the numerology, on personal numerology, and you have questions, then please go to our website and find out information and get a one-on-one private reading. I recommend it. I did a 30-minute, and it might as well have been an hour because it was so jam-packed full of stuff. And I got to record it so I can listen to it, and I'm still trying to figure out what half of that stuff was. It was so helpful. But yeah, so definitely go to our website and find out about that if you can't be there for the class. But thank you so much, guys. And we hope to see you real soon. All right. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank
All right.
you. Bye.